Hello and welcome to the France 24 interview. Today my guest is Ben Emmerson, the UN's Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and Counter-Terrorism. Thanks for joining us here on France 24. Now you have just presented the findings of your interim report on the use of armed drones. Can you start by telling us a little bit about your findings?
Yes, I think findings is a bit of a grand word at this stage. We are in a process of trying to batten down what the key issues are. So what the report does is really three things. First of all, it sets out what we know as best as with as much reliable information as possible about the number of civilian casualties in different parts of the world: Libya, Somalia, Pakistan, Yemen, and including the use by Israel of drones in relation to the conflict in Gaza. So that's the first thing. Second thing that it does is to look at the duties of states to secure accountability and transparency. And by that we mean to conduct proper independent investigations where it looks as though something may have gone wrong and civilians may have either been killed or injured, and critically to make those findings public. One of the crucial problems in this field is a complete transparency and accountability vacuum, because some of the operations, as we know, have been conducted by the CIA, which, like all secret intelligence agencies, is unable to confirm or deny its operations. So that's the second core element. And the third has been to set down both sides of the argument on what are the 5 or 6 main contested legal questions.
As you say, there is little or no transparency regarding the amount of civilian casualties as a result of drone strikes. What can you tell us about what you discovered? How many civilians have been killed by drone strikes?
Well, we know that in Pakistan, the official rates which were provided to me during my visit and inspection in Pakistan are compiled by officials in the Fatah Secretariat, that's the region where these strikes are taking place, having conducted some form of limited investigations on the ground about the individuals who've died. And their assessment is that in excess of 400 people who are civilians, and possibly as many as 600, have been killed during the time 2004 through to 2013 while these drone strikes have been taking place. We know also, for example, in Afghanistan, that the numbers are much smaller of civilian victims from drone strikes, and that the evidence, as it has been compiled by the United Nations mission in Afghanistan, it indicates that less civilians have been killed as a result of drone strikes than have been killed as the result of airstrikes by other air platforms. So we have a picture, but in the end, a definitive answer can only be obtained by full transparency, and that, I think, may well be an ask too far.
2 very interesting reports came out this week from human rights groups, one from Amnesty International, the other one from Human Rights Watch. Now, the Amnesty one focused on cases of drone strikes in Pakistan, and the Human Rights Watch one focused on strikes carried out by the United States in Yemen. Now, they came up with some really heartbreaking examples of strikes in which civilians were killed, one being the case of a grandmother in North Waziristan, a 68-year-old woman who was picking vegetables, picking okra in her garden, surrounded by her grandchildren, when she was killed by a US drone. And then it appears that there was another follow-up strike that injured members of her family. Now, for you investigating this, when you hear these sorts of stories, what do you think about the US drone program?
Well, we've identified so far 33 strikes where we are clear that there have been reported civilian casualties. Amnesty and Human Rights Watch are two organisations with the very highest standards of investigative integrity. And I don't just mean integrity in terms of honesty, but their standards of investigation, the way in which they conduct their investigations are really set very high. And I know those who've been involved in this process, and so on the face of it, these are strikes which one could not be other than very concerned. And I'm hoping that in the process of discussion and interaction with the United States, that they will provide an explanation for these incidents.
Another example that was given in the Human Rights Watch report on Yemen was of a strike that actually ended up killing not only the intended target, but a cleric who was actually trying to forward the peace process and negotiate with Al-Qaeda. A man of peace ended up being killed in this strike.
Well, assuming, as I do, that the Human Rights Watch investigation has been reliably conducted and that the witnesses, I mean, this is obviously one has to maintain objectivity, but assuming those facts, I mean, what it highlights is the critical problems of targeting intelligence. I mean, it's all very well to have a legal framework in place, but in the end it depends on the quality of the intelligence that's available. And the risks of targeting error are obviously as significant as the quality of the intelligence that's available to you.
And so, examples like this highlight the problems with the drone program. Firstly, how do you identify who is a target? How do you define who a civilian is, who is a civilian, who is not? What findings, in your findings, did you, what sort of conclusion did you come to regarding that?
Getting under the skin of the detailed intelligence that has led to some of these errors is really going to require the establishment of investigations which are within a national legal system rather than international. I mean, when one sees the number of targeting errors that we know that there have been, I mean, there are individuals who on US administration briefings have been successfully eliminated on more than one occasion. One individual, claims have been made that he was killed 4 times. So we know that these errors do occur. The question is, without transparency, without a greater understanding of the circumstances of individual strikes and the justification for them when things have gone wrong, there is far too much scope for ill-disciplined and erroneous incidents where civilians may lose their lives.
Why are you having this discussion now? Drones have been used for over a decade now, and there have been questions for quite a while over whether or not some drone strikes could amount to war crimes. Why are you having this discussion now? Why wasn't it had earlier?
Well, I think that the public awareness of drone strikes has increased exponentially over the past 2 or 3 years, and that in turn has pushed the issue higher and higher up the international community's agenda, culminating in a request to me by 16 states this time last year to focus on the human rights and humanitarian law implications of the use of drones. I mean, it's very important not to allow those kinds of questions to become politicized, to become footballs in disputes between states. I mean, amongst the states that asked me to investigate what is implicitly a policy that had been pioneered by the United States were Russia and China, 2 permanent members of the Security Council. It's very important to maintain a degree of objectivity in that process. But on the other hand, what is clear is that this is an issue of major concern and increasing concern as the technology proliferates.
And as other countries have access to drones.
Exactly.
Within the near future, lots of other countries, including Russia, China and Iran, could start using drones. How much of a concern is that?
Well, I think that first of all, it is inevitable that other states will be acquiring weaponized drone technology, and already more than 50 states have drones, but the question is whether they are capable of being armed with precision-guided munitions. But I think we are absolutely on the verge of other states having that technology, and it is inevitable that it's going to proliferate. And I think the United States and the United Kingdom are aware that, whilst this has been taking place largely under the auspices of their armed forces over the previous few years, the legal principles, the framework, has to be a framework that they're comfortable living with when it is adopted by states whose politics or policies they don't share.
You've been working on this all year. Can you tell me what you would say to families of people who have been killed in drone strikes?
Well, what I would say from my perspective is that I'm doing everything that I can to get to the bottom of those individual cases, as well as to ensure that the standards are rigorously applied that minimise the risk of anything similar happening to other families in the future. That's my mission. What do I think that the states responsible should say to them? I think they should say, we are prepared to investigate, and if we are found to be at fault, we will say sorry and we will provide you with compensation.
Ben Emmerson, thanks very much for joining us here on France 24.
Thank you.
You've been watching The Interview. Do stay tuned to France 24, there's more news coming up.